Hey everyone, it's been a while since I uploaded a video, and here I was just kind of getting ready for work, and I realized I had some time, so I am going to play another 10+0 game. Gonna see how well it goes for me, and continue that climb up to 2500, so let's jump in the pool, as always. Yeah, I think it's been about a week since I uploaded a video, so I'm sort of overdue. Hopefully I don't lose this game so I can actually upload it and not be totally shamed and embarrassed. One Knight f3 is always an interesting start. Never know exactly how the game is going to go. They could go here, they could go here, or apparently b3, g3 sometimes they play. So I like Knight f6, just also staying flexible. Most of the setups I go for involve something like e6, d5 and developing the bishop against many openings. So Knight f6 leaves my options open for that. b3 is not yet taking over the center, so I think I'm just going to play d5 and take over the center myself. I'm going to follow it up with c5, contesting both of these central squares that my opponent may want. I'm sort of expecting something like c4 to come, and we may end up in sort of a reverse Benoni style opening if they do choose to go with c4. Okay, bishop e2 instead. I am gonna try and fianchetto my bishop. I suspect that my opponent will be capturing on f6 here in order to make their play make sense. No, they just go d4, and I don't know if this is the most sensible way to continue here, because now I get my bishop out to g7 sort of without issue, and I don't think I'm going to have any weaknesses in the center, and yeah, I think white has sort of failed to put any pressure on me in the opening. So now, not to say that the game is over, but the game is more or less on level footing. No opening advantage for white in this case. In fact, I would probably prefer to be black here. Good central pawn, a little bit of extra space, and good square for this bishop. And this bishop still sort of remains to be seen where I want to put it, but I think f5 is a fine square, and potentially even a6, especially after this move c4. Bishop f5 or bishop a6 or something else. What do I want to do? By the way, playing e6 here I think is not super ridiculous, but the downside is not so much the weakening of the dark squares, which I think I can cover, but it does hem in this bishop pretty drastically. a5, a4 is also a pretty common idea whenever you're looking at this structure, especially when you don't have a b-pawn. a5, a4 can provoke some weaknesses in such a structure. I think I am going to start with a5. I really don't know what the best square for this bishop is going to be yet, so I'm sort of waiting to develop it here. Just waiting a bit. I think a5 is fine. I can go rook b8 sometimes to put some extra pressure on this slightly loose piece on b2. My opponent would like to play knight c3, but it might be running into something like knight e4 in some cases. Okay, they just take on d5. I will take back with the pawn. Notably, this is not even an isolated pawn. This is just some extra central space. It might be a bit weak depending on how the game progresses, but I think it should be fine. Bishop b5 I think is an attempt to stop me from going to a4. I can go bishop a6 here and sort of solve the problem of this bishop. I definitely know what the bishop is going to do if I decide to trade it off for this piece. Maybe rook b8 is also a sensible choice. Bishop d7 also seems fine. I think there are plenty of options here for black. It's sort of a question of, will I be able to play for any kind of advantage in this game? That sort of remains to be seen. I think I do just want to trade off these pieces. I went to d7 because I want to lift my queen so I can connect my rooks, activate them a little bit as well. Whereas if I went to a6 and my opponent were to capture, then rook a6 I don't think really helps me. Queen d7 I think does help though. I'm probably going to leave this knight on f6. I'm not super interested in trading these bishops right now, so I don't really want to move this knight and allow my opponent to take here just yet. So in the meantime, I'm going to focus more on playing this move, a5, a4, and bringing in my other pieces to the queen's side. Okay, knight a3 is my opponent's choice, and I could push something like a4, I could capture. I think my opponent is aiming for this square, but I don't know if that's actually the ideal scenario for my opponent. I am going to take this, and I think I'm going to continue with queen b6. Maybe actually, though, I will continue with queen d7. b6 optically looks like a better square, but it does give me sort of a problem on d5 that I'll have to deal with. Whereas if I go to d7, then if knight d4, I push a4. If my opponent plays a4, then I guess I'm claiming that the b pawn will be weak. Is it true? If I'm worried about pawn a4 by my opponent, sort of securing the knight on b5, I could play a4 myself, but I sort of struggle to believe that that will lead to any kind of advantage. Rook b8 here is another perfectly reasonable move. I was more attracted to these moves because, again, I want to activate this rook on f8, and rook b8 sort of leaves this rook in the dust over here. I think queen d7 is a perfectly fine move. I'm going to play it. I really don't think I'm risking much in this position at all, but like I said, it's a question of will there be a big enough imbalance to create any sort of chances. Knight back to c3 could be played in order to try and prevent a4 some more, but I'll just play rook fc8, continue very naturally, and yeah, definitely not going to be any worse here. But am I any better? Tough to tell. Knight c3 I can also consider playing knight e4, trying to take advantage of my opponent blocking this diagonal to activate my own bishop, but we shall see. So they do play a4, and I wasn't sure if this was going to be great. The good news for my opponent is a5 is sort of a cemented weakness, but b3 is also seen better days, right? That's not the happiest pawn of all time. I think rook fc8 is the natural way to continue, so I will play it, just activating my final piece. Just activating my final piece here. I'll have to look after the game. I wonder if a4 by black was a good idea or not. Just as a pawn sacrifice. May have been interesting. Okay, rook c1. I can allow my opponent to take, or I can take myself. I think I just want to take myself. If queen takes, I will be bringing the other rook off of the a file. And claiming that my temporary control of the c file might actually be worth something. A little bit unclear if that is going to be the case. Yeah, I thought this move won the game here. My opponent's attacking the a-pawn, but this looks very, very strong. I guess queen e2 isn't losing just yet, but I think this is definitely a step in the right direction for me here. I can take this and then go queen c6, and I've sort of taken over on the c file. I could also not take, but I think capturing is just fine. Why not capture? Yeah, I'm gonna take. And queen c6. The point is now there's no rook c1, whereas earlier the bishop would have supported that idea. My opponent might be tempted to play something like f3, but it's going to weaken this diagonal as well as the second rank a little bit. Where am I going to put the knight? Probably to f6, to be honest, just to get rid of the back rank mate ideas, defend this pawn a little bit. The knight's not the most active piece on f6, but you know, maybe it's good to have one defender around the king. Maybe just one. Maybe just one. Yeah, after queen d2, though, I'm feeling very optimistic about this position. I think black should be better. This b pawn is going to be hard to defend, so I'm going to invade on the second rank. Knight d2 ideas, f2 could be weak sometimes if you try to activate this rook. This knight is a little bit unclear what it's doing. Yeah, queen d4 might be a good move. It's going for some active counterplay, considering doing some crazy stuff like this, but maybe it's a little bit silly to start doing those kinds of things. There's some forking ideas here, but probably they don't work just yet. Queen c2 would be the active way to continue. It gives up my pawn over here. Yeah, I don't know. I could also play funny queen c1, but I have some doubts about that move, to be honest. I have some doubts. Maybe e6 is the way to continue. Just simple, solid e6. Yeah, I think I like this move. F3 could be a problem, and you always look for what squares your moves give up. E6 is loosening my control of D6, so if F3 and I move this piece, let's say to C5, maybe knight, okay, well obviously knight there is not immediately playable. I'm also losing control of F6 though, which could be relevant. Yeah, Queen D4 was a good try for some counterplay here. The super simple way of doing things is just go Queen C5, trade these pieces off, and call it a day, but get the feeling that's not the way to win the chess game. That's the feeling I get. I'm gonna try E6. It looks a little weakening, but I think it is worth a shot here. Okay, wow, I'm just a moron. How did I miss this idea? Yeah, okay. Just totally blind to this fork for the entirety of the game. It's a bit unfortunate. I can go E5, try and save the game here, but that one is a bit rough. Just a bit rough. I guess I'm going E5. This is pretty abysmal, to be honest. Pretty abysmal. Queen takes, Queen C7 is my try. I guess Queen takes here, Queen takes A7, and it will be an uphill battle to get back into this game. Yeah, really just blinded Knight A7 this entire time. These things do happen. Wait a second. Am I winning? I might be winning. Isn't that always the way it goes, though? Isn't that always the way it goes? You know, I'm talking all this time about, you know, these positional ideas. I have control of the C file. I should be much better. And then I blunder all my pawns and, you know, luck into some tactic that might win the game. Sounds like a chess game to me. Sounds like a chess game. So, in case you guys were worried that, you know, these things that maybe you're missing in lower level games, if you are lower level than me, in case you were worried that those would go away at some point, your chess career will never escape the constant blunders. It just will never escape. Constant, undying blunders. They will always be there. This is a common worry, I think, that a lot of players have, is that I wonder if, you know, someday I'll be so good at chess that I don't blunder like this all the time. No, don't worry. You will never be that good at chess. So you will always be able to blunder away all of your beautiful games. And that's just the way that chess is designed. Still not easy to win this. My opponent can win my A pawn. I'm just gonna go after the remaining queenside pawns and then try and consolidate a little bit. Yeah, I will take this. I think rook A8 was a bit better. Now this is sort of the same, but a few moves slower, I think, for my opponent. So we trade off this pawn for those two pawns. I'm gonna bring the knight back over to the king's side now and try and push h5. I think in general in these endgames, f7, g6, h5 is the most solid setup to aim for. Then it's just a matter of bringing the knight back into the game, defending my one weakness, and activating my king. If I can achieve all of those things, then life will be good. I'm going to go after the f2 pawn here. Looks a little bit tough for my opponent to actually defend it. Like, how do you stop knight d1 or knight e4? Can't really get this rook to the f file anyway. I guard this square. This might just be pretty winning. Okay, I have this move, going after this pawn or this pawn, depending on how my opponent plays, and that'll be the match here. So yeah, pretty typical game. You know, I was doing well, I thought, you know, outplaying my opponent positionally, then I missed the most obvious fork of all time, and then lucked my way into a winning tactic anyways. Sounds about right to me. Sounds about right. Give this check. Now my opponent has to pick a side. They pick that side. I go after this pawn. Not so easy to defend. This move could be annoying. Keeping the king in a box. And now I actually think I can just walk my king up the board and deliver checkmate. And that's the plan, at least. Okay. I'll take the time out of my day to defend my f-pawn. Why not defend my f-pawn after all? Yeah, I don't really care about the pawns at this point. I'm just gonna checkmate my opponent. Tough to stop checkmate here. Alright, and that's the match. Let's take a quick look here. I think this was a pretty high quality game up until the point where I was missing knight a7 on every turn, but that remains to be seen. Let's see, c5 apparently isn't the most common here, but then again, this is just not the most common opening of all time. Yeah, bishop b5 is the most common move, and I was gonna mention this. Usually when they play this b3, bishop b2 setup, they are very much fighting you for control of these dark squares. So trading the light squared bishop for the knight that controls both of these squares is a pretty common idea, which is why bishop e2 was a bit surprising to me. It's also why I thought here my opponent's idea was to take on f6, because by not going bishop b5 and trading off this bishop for this knight, I think my opponent was sort of giving up on this dark square battle, which is why it might make sense to just trade off this bishop for this knight immediately. That being said, bishops are good, knights are okay, but you know, I think the bishop might be worth a bit more. So d4 instead is fine. Take, take, bishop g7, take, take, castle, castle, and yeah, it's just total equality here, minus 0.1, just back to zeros. Turns out the computer does like bringing this bishop to f5, but I think anything is fine. a5 wasn't the favorite move of the engine, but it's gonna get back down to zeros given enough time. It's just all zeros here. Takes, takes, bishop b5, yeah, this move was a bit weird. White should be developing this piece. Yeah, this is just equality. You know, life is equality, I guess, depending on who you ask. Maybe it's not equality. And yeah, after queen d2, black is slightly better. Takes, takes, queen c6, queen d4, and then, yeah. Queen c2 is slight advantage to black. Queen c5 also slight advantage to black. And then this move is just losing, obviously, because of this. I go e5, and ooh, this would have been awkward. Would have been awkward. But practically, my opponent chose not to think too hard about it and just took on e5, and now life is not so bad. Knight c3 is equality. Queen c4 would have saved the game. I would have to take, because this is, believe it or not, somehow a pin. Yeah, after this, now the game is just over. This is just pretty dead. Yeah, not much my opponent could have done. f2 is weak, all my pawns were safe, and the game ended. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this game. We are climbing the rating ladder here up to 2417. I think my all-time high is something like 2422. I think I'm going to make a push for 2500. I'm also going to try to upload these a little bit more regularly, hopefully. I know, you know, a week off isn't such a bad thing, but channel's just starting. I want to put out some content for you guys, so let me know if you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Goodbye.